Hello?
Hello. Testing,
Hello?
testing.
Check. Can you hear me? Terrific. You're at the first session, the Lights, Camera, Action, Navigating the Television Entertainment Industry. I'm Marvin Marcello. Some of you are in my class. None of you are getting extra credit today, so that's awesome. I kid. You might, maybe. Anyway, I hope that through this session you learn a little bit about the production process. We have some great people up here on stage to kind of walk us through a typical series or an idea that we got through. The idea came from Marcus Blakely, the story developer. So last night we were huddled in a think tank. I think they called it Ricos. And we're having a beverage or two, and the idea came out. So I think it'll work out well. All right, so first I'll introduce everyone. Joey Cliff, to my right, your left, is a writer, performer, and registered member of the Cowlitz tribe who has written on, is this Wabbit and Lego, how do you say that?
Oh, Lego Ninjago.
Ninjago. And decoded for the Cartoon Network, OMG, Swamp Talk with Shrek, and Donkey, and What They Got Right for DreamWorks. He's also wrote a web series for the Fine Brothers, which was nominated for a 2017 Streaming Award in the immersive category. And he's a writer, consultant for Spirit Rangers, the Netflix series, and also wrote for the PBS Molly of Denali. And more important, he's the administrator for the LA Underground Cat Network, a 6,000 member strong Facebook group for Los Angeles comedians to share pictures of their cats. All right, and next to him is Marcus Blakely, the Vice President of Skydance Television. Vice President of Television, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. He supervises the development of original scripted television shows for broadcast, cable, and digital platforms, including shows as Grace and Frankie, Altered Carbon, and Netflix, Jack Ryan on Amazon, Condor on AT&T Audience Networks, 10 Days in the Valley on ABC, and Dietland on AMC. Prior to Skydance, Marcus was the head of development for Management 360, where he served as executive producer on Mary plus Jane, along with rapper Snoop Dogg. Marcus has also served as manager drama development at Fox, and prior to that, he served as director of drama development at Sony Pictures, where he was part of the development team that worked on the scripted series Breaking Bad, Justified, and The Beast. Next to Marcus is Donnie Narquinez. She is the executive producer and showrunner for Top Chef. Many of you may have seen that show. She works for Magical Elves. She started her career as a production assistant on the very first season of Top Chef and has risen through the ranks to ultimately become the executive producer and showrunner for Top Chef and Last Chance Kitchen for Bravo, as well as Sugar Rush and Sugar Rush Christmas for Netflix. Her work on Top Chef and Last Chance Kitchen has garnered her over, I know the number's wrong, I have over 10 Emmy Awards. 15, sorry. Yeah. Emmy Awards and 6 Producer Guild of America nominations. And to her right is John Ibsen. I know him as John when he was here, Ibby Ibsen. He's the Senior Vice President of Creative Film Services for Walt Disney Studios. He's also one of our Murrow Hall of Achievement recipients. John led the campaign for Marvel's The Avengers and set iTunes records twice for the most viewed trailer and posted an opening of more than 200 million. John has also won industry top awards for movie trailers, including the action preview for The Dark Knight. Served as creative lead on marketing campaigns for Marvel, Disney, live action, and DreamWorks, and worked with at Disney on a tentpole campaign for Iron Man 3, that's a man with a robot or something. Thor, Dark World, and Need for Speed, and others. John, I'm sorry, this is an old bio that I got.
Very old.
And then next to John is Ian Kennedy, the president of MDOT's Fantastic. Ian first film was The Basket, produced here in Spokane by North by Northwest. He went on to Cinetel Films in Los Angeles and has worked as a producer, post-production supervisor, as well as international sales and distribution for films and television. He's currently the president and executive producer for MDOT's Fantastics Electronic Graphics in Los Angeles. His group produces award-winning shows such as the Oscars, Grammy Awards, Global Awards, NFL Honors, Emmy Awards, Tony Awards, and other shows such as The Voice, Keith Urban, Jennifer Lopez, and the Florida Georgia Line. So welcome our guests today, panelists. Many of them who back in the day sat in the same chairs that you guys sat in, physically the same chairs that you sat in, because that hasn't changed. And anyway, but I wanted to take this opportunity to let you guys know how a little process of a story idea kind of comes to shape and how it goes through each of their departments or their companies thinking of the idea. So we're going to start with Joey, since he's a writer, creative writer, and we'll start from here. Joey, when you have your idea, how does it kind of start and take shape?
Okay, hey everybody. Before I get started, I have not been on campus for about a decade, so if you could please indulge me with a go. That feels good. That feels good. Yeah, as a writer comedian, when I have an idea for a TV show, usually I go through, the creative process of, coming up with like a log line, a way to summarize that show in just like a sentence or two. I'll put together maybe, a couple of pitch documents, like a 1 or 2 page treatment going over like, characters, story, all those kinds of things. And then from there, I'll usually have, my literary manager set up a meeting with, executives to pitch the story around. Or I'll have what's called like a general meeting first, which is usually like a first meeting that you have with an executive. That's kind of a getting to know you meeting and sort of a vibe check. And then after you have that meeting, if you have an idea for a show, you'll, do the exec reach outs, or your literary manager or representatives will. And then, you just kind of go down the process of, you pitch the idea around to different, production companies, networks, and set streaming services that you have connections with. And then if they really like the idea and they buy it in the room, then you start usually a very long 6-month contract negotiation process, which just takes way longer than you think it would. And then, once it goes through that process and the deal is closed, you start what's called development, which is usually like a 1 to 5 year long process on the 5 on the very long end, 1 on the very short end. Basically working with the development exec to kind of sharpen in and hone in your idea to, the network specifications to, hopefully drive toward what is called a green light, which is basically the network saying, here's tens of millions of dollars, make your show. So I think that'll take it through my side of it. So I think that passes it off to Marcus in development.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Joey. And Joey's correct. It's like what my job is at the studio is I often work with artists and writers, and I help. One, Joey will come in and say, hey, I have an idea. I am the interface of the studio where we have the money. And we then go take that idea around town, streamer, broadcast, and then develop it. And then I follow it all the way from the inception all the way through post, and then at some point I get to hand it off to what's called a current team, and then I go on to like the next idea. And so I've been doing this now, 20 years, and it's a long, fun job. It's like a sandbox that I get to play in, and I can't think of a better job. So, and then what I do is, but part of like this process of working on scripts, going into production, this is where Donine comes in, because this is her specialty. She's a showrunner, and she's a magical showrunner at Magical Elves, and I'm going to hand it off to you.
Yeah, I think the process for me is maybe a little bit different because I'm in reality television, and it happens a little bit faster maybe than scripted sometimes. But I'm taking a show from, I'm actually in my 20th season of Top Chef, and so, I started this season, we started casting back in April of last year, so about a year ago, and we were filming by mid-August and wrapped filming in October, and then our first episode aired in March. And so I'm following it all the way through from start to finish, determining the cast, the location, the challenges, all that stuff, and then, taking the episode through the edit as well. So right now we've got I think episode 4 just aired. Episode 5 is airing on Thursday. Episode 7 just locked. So we're kind of up against air, and we will be until May. Yeah, so that's it.
Hi, I'm Ibby. So basically the creative marketing team works alongside all of these kind of departments as it starts to go into production. Oftentimes, especially on the big movies that we're working on now, for Marvel or Disney or any of those types of things, we'll start extremely early on, side by side with production, from dailies to where our first target is, what creatively we're trying to aim for. So if we have Comic-Con, or if we have a big trailer target like this weekend, Super Mario Brothers or something like that, where we're starting to launch a campaign, depending on what cycle of the campaign we're in, we start very early. Right, so we start producing materials, start creatively getting our direction, tone, vibe. We work with tons of vendors in town. So there's creative agencies all over the world, but a lot of them obviously are based in Los Angeles. We'll work with those teams of producers, editors, graphics artists, writers, things like that, to kind of hone in where we think the campaign should go. I get to lead that kind of idea. So we'll brainstorm, we collaborate, and I started off as an editor. So I was a PA, then I was an editor, then I was a creative director, producer, helped run a creative agency, and then I moved to Disney about 12 years ago. My super old Avengers movies and all those things. Now, we're updated with, Wakanda and Black Panthers and Guardians of the Galaxy and things like that. So point is, we kind of work to hone in on these campaigns. We then obviously produce the material, so we'll go teaser, trailer, if we have a Super Bowl spot, something like that, big targets, big hits, and then we start to go in. Right now for Guardians of the Galaxy, we were talking about it this morning, we launched tickets yesterday. So in the Champ game, we had a spot that then launched our tickets, and we now will be kind of Pulse Media, for lack of a better term, but we will be on pretty much all the time. So we start with kids, we start with YouTube, digital, and I'm kind of responsible for overseeing all of the elements that I try to describe it as creatively, either tone, digital ads, banners, print, TV spots, trailers, all of that, the creative that goes into that, anything that you see, touch, or feel before the movie comes out, or the show, because we're now doing Disney Plus, that's kind of where we come in and do our work. And then oftentimes we'll take it into post release, and then into what we call pay one, which is where a TV show, movie, or things start to have their life cycle on demand or on the service. And then, for something like Wakanda Forever, we will then start an awards campaign after the movie came out, and that's kind of where I felt like Ian would come in nice.
Hi there, Ian Kennedy, and my company MDOTS is primarily a visual design company for primarily live television shows, whether that be award shows, variety shows, even design for musical acts that go on tour in the summer. All the stuff you see on the big screens, that's what we collaborate with the production designer, art directors from various other companies to come up with the look and the feel that the director and producers of the show are going after. Be that, I think Marvin mentioned in my introduction, for these guys, they're most concerned with the Emmy Awards, and that's one that we do, which is coming up in September. And so I'm sure we'll get into more details in the Q&A, but that's...
And then to loop it back, once I get the Emmy, I find a place in my mantle for it, and then kidding.
Okay, so many things that we teach here in the Murrow College is, in general, just a foundational kind of art of production. And you guys found your niche. So how did you go from sitting in class, looking at everything that we do in a very generic way, kind of, and you say, well, I wanted to be a writer. How did you get there, Joey? How did you set your mind for that?
So I guess that something that I think is really cool about Cable 8 is this process that we just described, like taking a ton of people, like you experience a microcosm of that in what you do at Cable 8. You make shows, you pitch shows to the Cable 8 executive board. You somebody eventually makes the show. It goes through post. You submit it for, like college Emmys and stuff like that. So basically what we're doing is exactly what you're doing, just on like a little bit bigger of a scale and with a little bit bigger of a team. So for me, I really dove into Cable 8 with both feet when I first moved to WSU. And when I moved to LA in 2010, I really just kind of had this broad goal of just wanting to do comedy. I didn't necessarily know what that meant. Is that writing? Is that acting? Is that directing? Is that stand-up? Is that whatever? And I basically just, through Kook connections, got really lucky and got an executive assistant job with the guys that created Scare Tactics on Sci-Fi. Scott Halleck is a Kook alumni who worked on Live at 8 in the 80s and has since worked on a ton of hidden camera prank shows since then. And, seeing the inside of the production company process, being able to sit in on show pitches, people pitching TV shows was really useful. I also just dove into LA comedy with both feet, places like the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, Second City, and et cetera. And really just spent a lot of time kind of, for lack of a better term, working survival jobs at failing internet startups while making comedy on the side. And, through that process, by trying a lot of different things, trying, acting, doing onstage stuff, doing stand-up, making my own things, directing things, writing, pitching shows and whatever. I basically just kind of, weirdly, non-linearly, eventually found my path of I really like writing, storytelling, and, just kind of being a comedic personality. And that's just kind of through basically just trying a million different things, and you kind of pick it's you try one thing and maybe you like 5% of acting for camera, but maybe 95% of it you don't like. So then maybe you take that 5% that you do like and you apply it to, directing or on stage stuff or writing or whatever. And eventually when you do that, you eventually hone in on your niche of the thing that you really like doing. So, it was definitely a roundabout process. And, I'm skipping through a lot of, survival jobs, a lot of crashing on people's couches, a lot of, working as an assistant for a while, and eventually getting my first writing jobs through people I did sketch comedy with who happened to bring me in for things, and all of that eventually leading to, pitching and selling my own TV shows and being staffed on, shows for big networks and streaming services. So, it's not necessarily a direct path, but I think that, it's all something that you just kind of jump in and try it, and eventually you'll figure out the niche of what aspect of it you really like. And that's something that you can start in Cable 8. If you want to do on-camera stuff, you can start trying to do segments on different Cable 8 shows. You can start trying to direct a show, and you can figure out kind of what you like about it and what you don't like about it, and eventually kind of, Frankenstein that together into what your dream career is.
So Marcus, let's go on that theme of Cable 8, and I'll call it trying to make a show called Cable 80s. And I take this idea and I bring it to you, and as a story developer, what do you do with that? How do you start?
Where I start is we always start with emotion. What is the thing that is inside that writer that they're dying to tell? It's what we called an inside out approach. Everybody can have great ideas, and I've heard millions of ideas where it's there's a cop, and he's got to solve a mystery, and it's okay, I understand that from an architecture standpoint. That's something that everybody is really familiar with, but on a base emotional level, what's motivating him or what them, and that's always where I start with, particularly when I have conversations with writers. And that's playing in the sandbox. That's the fun. That's the thing where I think, Joey, we're dealing with clay when we're developing an idea. And then you always want to find the most emotional, satisfying way in that an audience, and you always kind of 30,000 feet above, you're always thinking about who's the audience. And I think what Ibby also, what you deal with is you have a major audience you're going to serve. And that's where I always come in, where it's we sell a myriad number of TV shows, and we have some of the biggest ones on television right now. And part of that is we learned from, as a company, we made a movie 10 years ago. The audience that we made it for wasn't satisfied with certain creative elements, but on the TV version of it, we delivered, because we had an actor that the fans absolutely was yep, that's our guy. And so, but I always go back to emotion, because at the end of the day, when you're sitting there and you're hitting play on something or you're watching something, you want to feel connected. And in television, particularly when you're sitting in your home, you're inviting those characters into your home. And there's a reason why some of these shows have endured now for decades, and people are rediscovering. And I always find it fascinating of the long tail of television right now. And there's comfort. So whether it's the friends from Friends, or my favorite, Costanza from Seinfeld, like, to me, it's nourishing to just be like, yeah, I want to spend time with these people. And it's on an emotional level. It's never about the plot points, but I'm always really satisfied when I see George Costanza finding a place to nap during work behind his desk. Because I can relate. So yeah.
I like that, napping behind the desk. I'm going to try that. So Doneen, you connect us a lot during your Top Chef competition, little competitions within the competition. And how do you come up with those kind of ideas that kind of bring us all into your whole, to keep us watching every week to see who's going to be eliminated next and what kind of things are you going to put them up against?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing because, at the end of the day, we are a cooking show, but we're also telling the stories of all of our chefs and where they came from, the struggles that they had to endure coming through the kitchens. So it's like you want somebody, you want to relate to somebody, you want to root for somebody, they're competing, but you also want to feel connected to them. And I think probably the seasons that are not as loved are the ones that people didn't latch on to a character in that season that they didn't see themselves in or that they weren't rooting for. And so that's really important for us. And we have, now we're kind of settled into like 14 episodes in a season. And so I assemble what we call the challenge team, and we spend weeks on end. We go scout locations, meet with locals wherever we're shooting. So this year it was in London. So we went to London, met a lot of restaurateurs and chefs, and went to various, historical locations and all those things to find inspiration for what these challenges could be that we could put our chefs to the test with. And, so we're kind of deciding how we're going to move through the season, where do we want a team challenge? Where do we want an individual challenge? Where do we want to make something that is like just really fun and fast paced, or is it like really focused on the individual and telling their story? Each one we kind of try and find that balance to the season and make sure that nothing feels too repetitive as well. So when we're constantly trying to think of new ways to do the same thing over and over again coming into the 20th season. And going to new cities every year obviously helps with that. And then bringing in new and different cast. And so one thing we're seeing this season, which has been really great, is we've been lucky enough that our show's been replicated in 29 territories around the world. And so we're doing a season of winners and all-stars from around the world. And so we're seeing, we've got 2 winners from Top Chef Middle East who are doing things that we've never seen on Top Chef US. So it's just really new and fresh this season that way. So we all just it's a really collaborative process. And it's not just the way I want it to be. I've got bosses I have to answer to, but I also have people that work for me and pitch me ideas. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome, but how can we twist it and do it slightly different,
Great. And Ibby, you cut a lot of promotional trailers and things. And I think you told me the story once that you cut Guardians of the Galaxy once in a certain way, and then you had to come back and redo it because it didn't turn out. How do you get through that phase in your mind? Like you take Doneen's, or from Joey's start of his story, going all the way through Doneen, and then you have this product, and now you're supposed to promote it without giving it all away. And sometimes when I see a promotional video that gives away the story, and I go, oh my God.
The most asked question of all time. 1, why do you give everything away? 2, do you actually get to see the movie? Yeah, we do. And a lot of times people think that that's dictated to us, I guess, from a producer, a filmmaker, or a creative officer, or something like that. And it's really not. Our job is to kind of go out there and find the emotion, find the connection, find the characters that you want to be with, or find the arc that we can tell in a short form trailer or story to sell you something that you don't actually get to hold in your hand. right? So you're buying an experience, you're inviting, these characters into your life or your home, or you care about them in some way, and you're not going to walk away with anything. You're buying something that is an emotional response. So a lot of times we approach it in the similar way, where we're kind of, I'm looking for not only something I can connect to, something that feels, and again, a lot of the things that I have the fortune to work on are big 4-quadrant or at least 3-quadrant movies, where we want to be broad and we want families and adults and young men and young women to show up to these things. So it's a broad kind of feeling and storytelling, but we also are trying to find something that feels unique and special in whether it's the show or the movie or the launch or however we're approaching it. So, case in point for Guardians, the first Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm dating myself a little bit. We're on the 3rd one now, so it's like season 20. But we didn't know what to make of it. It was this brand new kind of IP. It hadn't really been a popular series as much in the Marvel universe. And so we approached it in several different ways. So we kind of said, okay, the only thing we have, I wish I could show it to you guys. The only thing we have is we have Chris Pratt. He kind of was somewhat known. Our biggest actors and stars were a tree and a talking raccoon, and one of them says one sentence all the time. I mean, how are you going to sell it on Vin Diesel and Bradley Stryker? Bradley. So we basically kind of set off to try to create a piece that felt emotional and felt superhero to us. And when I go back and look at it now, it's ridiculous. It's so emotional. We started with Chris losing his mom on Earth, and then he goes up, and I looked at it recently to kind of laugh. But when you end up in a place creatively, and we got to the Uga Chakas and we got to the character kind of lineup and the exposés, and we had these bunch of a-holes that are we allowed to say that in this building?
Sure.
Yeah, Cable 8. So it kind of feels like one of those revelations at the end when you finally get there and you look back and you go, oh yeah, of course. Why didn't we think of that from the first place? You just don't know. So a lot of it is process, a lot of it's collaboration that we speak to, great minds, a lot of creative people, kind of navigating these waters and going, wait a second, I like that. And because I think coming from the chair and coming from editorial and post so much, not only at Cable 8, and I have tons of stories I could tell about that, but coming from that world, you speak the same language. So when you're collaborating with other people who are sitting in a chair or have produced, you all are with a common goal. And so you're trying to create and talk to each other, and you go, wait a second, I really like that, but maybe it's not set up right. And so, we're kind of we're putting a puzzle together. And one of the things that we like to do is we take the puzzle that comes from the movie or the show, and we completely scatter it. I don't want to know. In fact, a lot of times what we do, and not to get into nitty gritty, but we'll take a movie or dailies, of course, and break them down so infinitely that we never want to go back to the source material. We always want to go to the subclip. We want to be sifting. We want to, we have our selects. We have we break it down to the minutia of the movie or of the cut, and then we put that puzzle together in a way that to us makes sense and forms up. And one of the funniest things that happens is we'll go and show filmmakers, and I look at it through their eyes, and they're going, "What did you do to my movie?" And we're like, "Yeah, but..." The good news is that over the last 23 years, trailers and TV, campaigns and things like that, the people have been able to see them over and over again with YouTube and with where you can see trailers kind of whenever you want, and so people are very savvy. So that's another thing that kind of for us, and I'm kind of bouncing all over the place here, but is that with a savvy audience like yourselves, we're kind of constantly trying to evolve and change and see how we do things and tell stories in a different way and kind of find that hidden harmony and uniqueness. Did that even answer? I didn't even answer that.
That was good. Now, Ian, you have the job that some of our students currently do right now with the newscast, where you do live television. And in one of the award ceremonies, there was the slap that was heard around the world. So how do you deal with doing live TV and an award show at that level and still keep it all kind of calm underneath your hat there?
Well, yes, that's a good question. There's a lot of pressure with live national TV and big broadcasts like that. One of the things that helps is that everybody involved is very experienced, and for the most part, everybody's pretty multidisciplined. So, you can tell if something's going to go south before it goes south, and help compensate for it. Of course, nobody knew that Chris Rock was going to get slapped. So there was a very long, uncomfortable silence on the PL, probably 20 seconds, and then the director came on asking, "Was that a bit? Is that a bit I don't know about?" And so it was, it caught everybody by surprise. It's, for instance, my background, in my younger years, did broadcast engineering. I really still like that now, and that comes into play with the shows that we do, because there's a lot of technology involved in creating and feeding all of the different screen surfaces, and sometimes there's different international feeds that go out from various shows. So you have to kind of know what everybody else's job is, at least a little bit, to be able to, make sure everything goes off smoothly. And sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes you can fake it and nobody notices. So, anyhow, so the point is, my earlier years, I produced independent feature films, and also ran a post-production facility. So, all those experiences that you have throughout your working world, help you when I never thought I would be, a president of a creative design company. I can barely draw stick figures myself, but we have great artists and assistants and all that help put all that stuff together. And, once you're 20 years plus on in your life, what looks good, what's going to be received well, and everybody is just moving towards that goal.
Great. Stick figures is the level of drawing that I expect from my students, so that all works in. We're going to take questions now, and I want you to come up and get a microphone if you want to ask any of our guests questions, and please ask them hard questions.
Wait, really quick, there's something I wanted to add to kind of I think summarize a lot of what folks have said. This is like a lesson that I learned from Cable 8. It's that television and film is a product, and ideally, by making TV shows, from the log line to development to show running, you're hopefully creating a product that people want to watch. And basically every step of the process, you're basically trying to convince everybody, including the people that are working on it, is this a show or a film that you want to see? So I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's something that I keep in mind when pitching and when developing shows and when writing is is this something that I'm passionate about? And also, what is the audience for this, and what I have to think about in terms of what subreddit would freak out about this. So I think that that's something that's good to keep in mind when coming with ideas, even at the Cable 8 level, is just do you as the creator of this thing want to watch this thing? Because if not, don't make it.
And to add to that, that also touches on relatability. So we look a lot at relatability, what in this is for me or for you. And when I go off and create the materials with the groups and we collaborate, I'm always looking for something that feeds my fire or makes me feel emotional. And to be honest, I'm not a comic book guy. I didn't grow up with comic books. I grew up with movies, and I grew up with stories, and I grew up with wanting to care about things. So in a way, it's kind of like this hidden sauce where if you have that, if you tap into something inside there that makes you feel that way, then you go off and see where it takes you. And I also think that one of the things that's interesting too thematically is listening to everyone's career paths, and I hope it rings true to all of you in this room how different all of us and everyone out here, how different your path is going to be, and to every professional in the room or undergrad or graduate, it's all so different. So everything you're going to do is going to eventually, hopefully, you find something you're passionate about, and that you take enough experience and you've had enough know-how and you speak a certain language, and you just kind of keep forging forward and get to a place. That's my soapbox, but. And this, by the way, the part of this too is the questions is super important because we don't know what you care about. And what I kept trying to put myself in your chair today, and as I was thinking about this last night, I don't know what you guys want to know about. I'm here to help. I'm here to answer any questions. All of us up here want what's best for you. So please ask away.
Hi guys, I do have a question. Thank you so much for being here. This is awesome. Just wanted to say that Cable 8 is still rocking it. I loved what you guys had to say about that. I feel like there's so much emphasis to have a job lined up, like right after college. I was just curious, like how much time elapsed after graduation did you get that job or like get that position that really was able to like network?
Oh, no. I moved to LA with $1,000 of student loan money in my bank account and a 1986 Honda Accord that burned oil while I drove it, and my brother's couch, who lived in Inglewood, that I could crash on for not very much money. So, I didn't necessarily have a job lined up when I moved to LA. I think that LA is a town that it is, people are more likely to hire you if you're in LA. Because, usually, especially for entry-level things like PA stuff and assistant stuff, it's like a show sells, and then you staff everybody up, and then like 2 days before the job starts, everybody's like, wait, do we have any PAs? And then whoever is in the room will say like, oh, my roommate wants to be a PA. We should hire them. And if you're in LA and have like a car that works, and like, somebody sends Marv an email that's just like, yo, is that person cool? Will they show up on time? And Marv responds with, yes, then you'll get the job, So for me, like basically what I did is I just moved to LA and like kind of made all those Cable 8 connections of people that I worked with at Cable 8 that had moved down, and graduated maybe a year or two prior to me. I just set up as much like coffee and like lunch, hangs as I could to kind of pick their brain about the industry, and also just to like get on their radar as like a new Coug in town. And, like Marcus was fortunately one of those people that I met with, and he was super nice. And I think I very awkwardly was like, will you give me a job, please? And he said no. But
I didn't have a job to offer.
Yeah, you didn't have a job to offer. But, I met with somebody who was like a teleprompter operator on one episode of one Cable 8 show that I hosted a segment on. I was nice enough to her. She saw I was in town. I reached out to her, got coffee with her. And then like a week later, an executive in charge of a production company needed a new assistant because they fired their old assistant, and he asked my friend if she knew anybody that was like new in town that wanted assistant work, and she said, oh yeah, my friend Joey, I met with him last week. He's super nice. He just moved into town. I interviewed for it. This was 9 a.m. in the morning. I interviewed at 1, and then I got a call at 4 p.m. saying, you got the job. You start Monday, and this was a Friday. So it's like, it's kind of it's an industry fueled by chaos magic, and you just got to kind of be ready for it,
Yeah. It's so fascinating to hear that, Joey, because that is, I think, Donnie, we're all kind of shaking our heads, nodding, going, yeah, that's exactly it. I think one of the things that I did have a job before I moved to Los Angeles. I worked at ABC first, and it was, again, luck, but afterwards, I realized I was in the wrong career path at ABC. I was not doing what I had set out to do. So I quit, and I did the whole PA thing, and then through one chance of fortune, I got an interview at Sony as a temp. And then, they were like, hey, we need somebody to go over to scripted development. I was like, great, that's exactly where I want to be. And then I met with those folks. They're still my best friends today. And they literally said, when can you start? I said, tomorrow. And they said, great, come on in. I have not looked back. The first show, this is a true story. First day on the job, I'm sitting there. My boss, Chris, he throws a script on my desk and he says, read this and tell me what you think. And I was like, great. And I read it as fast as I could. And that script was Breaking Bad. And I read it and I went, oh my God, this is brilliant. And I said, this is grossly irresponsible.
Hard pass. Nobody would like this.
No. And I said, are we going to make this? And he's like, we're going to make that. And I'm like, awesome. And I can't think of a better, more formative moment in my life. And the person who put me there was a Coug. It was Pat Sheehan. He's not here today. But it was through Pat.
He's still alive.
He's still alive. He's still alive. He would be here. He would be here. But it was, again, the Coug connection that put me in that place at that time.
He's also my connection too, actually.
Yeah.
So I was not smart like Joey, and I did not save any of my student loan money. So I went home to Seattle, and I worked a summer job saving to move to LA. And come September, I was like, it's just like, I got to do it or I'm not going to do it. You know, that was kind of my mentality. So I was just like, I got to do it because I had met Marcus and Pat and a bunch of people during my senior year because I happened to be graduating the year one of our professors was retiring. And so they came down and I drove them around town.
She picked me up at the airport.
You know, and so they were very kind to me and just were like, you know, when you come, let us know, send us your resume. So I came, I sent them my resume. I was continuing to look for jobs. I was looking for part-time work anywhere. And just hoping that, you know, I'd get something, and got a call because Pat's then girlfriend was working as an AP on the first season of Top Chef, and they needed PAs in the office. And I was only supposed to be in the office for a couple of weeks. I went, great, went and interviewed, got the job, and then they ended up actually firing the other PA and taking me to San Francisco with them. Because I was just like, what can I do? How can I help? You know, and yeah, I just kind of took off from there.
The reason why I was nodding my head so much is because that's what I should have done. Okay, I'm an example of what not to do when you need to move to Los Angeles. I knew people. I had a place to stay, a couch or two to sleep on. Not the best people in the world, but I didn't network, and I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't know how it worked. And this was 2000, so it was a little different. It wasn't, you know, as digital as it can be now. It was Backstage West and looking for jobs, and I so wished that, or listening to these stories, I think, God, what my future would have been if I would have actually reached out and found.
I think you're doing just fine.
And you know, mine's a story of perseverance. Mine's a story of continuing to work hard and show up and talk to people. And I figured out networking once I got there. But I employ you all to do what this group has done so well, which is reach out to fellow Cougs, reach out to people. Everybody knows someone or can connect you. In my life, I temped. I found odd jobs. I had filler jobs. I did 10-key at a tow truck company. I filed. I'll never file anything again in my life. I did like hours and hours and weeks of filing just to make ends meet. And I had no money, and I was about to turn around and come back. And I was convinced by a few friends of mine to stay. I continued to call the one place that I had an in at that was called Creative Domain at the time. It was a creative agency, and the guy who was going to hire us, he was a PA, he's kind of the operations manager there. He said to me in the interview, if I tell you you're calling me or emailing me too much, that's a good thing. And I took that for real, and I called him all the time. And finally, one day, about 6 months into my LA venture, he called and said, "Can you start?" And I said, "Absolutely." And then I did what we all kind of are talking about, which is I never looked back. I kept working. I kept coming up with solutions. I kept asking what more I could do. Within 3 months, I started to ask for projects and edit. And I would just, while I was there on a Saturday, everybody would be working, and I'd say, "Hey, can I get a copy of the project?" And we had Pearl Harbor. I don't know if you remember that movie, but Pearl Harbor was at the agency at the time. And so I started cutting on Pearl Harbor and just learning. And I just self-taught. I'd ask editors. I'd ask for advice from everybody around me, anyone who could help. I'd use one day. I'd go to the next bay the next day. I tried not to overdo it, and just kept working hard.
Yeah, so when I was graduating in 1997, a while ago now, it was a fork in the road, and it was a big leap of faith. I had kind of three options in front of me. One was continue on with the Moreau School for my master's degree, which I was kind of leaning towards. I also had an opportunity in Seattle at a television station's documentary department, which also seemed pretty cool. And then third was to go work for a small company in Spokane that did industrial videos and local TV commercials, some regional stuff. But they had just started dipping their toe in independent feature films. And the position was to be the runner, gopher, make lunch for everybody every day. We made lunch for our clients. And then after hours in the evening, be the janitor. So I'm, vacuuming and cleaning toilets, and so it didn't seem appealing to me, after doing all the stuff we did here in Cable 8 and, other professional opportunities I'd been at. I felt like it might be a step backwards. Now, Marvin, my mentor, highly encouraged me to take that job, and I'm sure glad he did, because 3 months in, I was down in Los Angeles with that company, working on my first feature film with C. Thomas Howell and Joan Severance.
They don't know who those people are.
Yeah, they don't know. Yeah, so it's B movie actors from the '80s. Anyhow, so same story. You, all you students, I'm sure, are the same as sitting up here. Is that you'll take the opportunity and run with it. Always have a can-do, go-to attitude, and it gets noticed, because it's amazing how many recent graduates out there just don't take initiative, and you're constantly having to ask them to do things, and employers pick up on that right away. They get weeded out, and you guys will flourish.
I would also say to let Marvin know what you were interested in, because I told him I wanted to move to Los Angeles. That was my goal. And so then that's why he hooked me up with people that lived in Los Angeles, So make sure he knows what you want to do. He's got great advice.
Well, yeah, just a really quick pops of advice. Somebody mentioned a leap of faith. It is a leap of faith to move to LA. It's like, I don't have famous relatives who could hook me up with a gig. I think that the best advice that I've heard on an internship that I've carried with me for my whole career is, to work in the entertainment industry, you need to learn to love the uncertainty. You're going to move there, and you're probably not going to know what your job's going to be. When you finish your first job, you're probably not going to know what your second job is going to be. But I think that if you, are a nice person who's easy to work with, who doesn't cause a lot of drama, who shows up on time, works hard, and isn't afraid to reach out for networking, it might take a month to find your first gig. It might take a year to find your first entertainment industry gig. It might take a couple of years. In the meantime, it's completely okay to get a job at a Starbucks or something like that while you're making those connections. I remember literally filling out my California unemployment form in the backstage of a comedy theater, doing my set, and then dropping it in the mailbox immediately after my show. And I think that all of us took completely different paths to get to where we're going. So it's not a linear line from Cable 8 to being a development executive or a TV writer or a showrunner or whatever. But if you just jump in and have faith and work hard and are nice to people and are easy to work with, that's, it worked for all of us.
All right. Thank you for the questions. Our session is ended, but I just want to leave you guys with one last thing. What's that?
That was fast.
Yeah,
We're just saying.
Yeah, if you have more
That was one
questions, I'll just
question.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'll
we're gonna get
stand
the
over
Cable 8
there.
or
Yeah,
some
there's
of us will
another
be.
session at the end of the day in Studio B for Cable 8 people, and so we'll see you there. All right? Walk towards your destiny. Don't let it come to you, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
LA isn't for everybody either.
If you have questions for me, I'll be in the lobby for 10 minutes, and then I might get bored and leave. So I don't know. Talk to me fast. That was so fun. I hope it was useful.
No, it was perfect.
Sorry
Thank
if we
you.
were all long-winded.
No,
I know we
you
didn't get a
guys
ton of
were
questions.
great.